We'll do it live. F it.
There he is, René Perez, guitarist of Flesh Parade. You've been in the band for 3 decades now.
Yeah.
Which is just amazing. Are you surprised that we're sitting here, 31 years since I actually saw your band and you play, and we're talking about it today? Is that just kind of like surreal to you?
Yeah, it really is, because I don't really think about it too much, but then when I see like the updates on how many people are listening online and still actually care about it this far down the road, it's pretty cool, but it's still like very underground though compared to a lot of the other grind bands out there.
It is. I would say it's different. There's something about certain bands. I would consider Flesh Parade one of those bands that there's, yeah, there's numbers, but there's enough there, and enough people appreciate what you guys are doing back in the early '90s, and what I think what we're seeing today as a resurgence of that sound that you guys are doing 30 years ago. And I do want to talk about that state of music, kind of where we came from, take a journey through it, your journey, Flesh Parade's journey through it all. And I really want to center it around the sound of grindcore because everyone says metal, and metal, we're all under that umbrella of metal, starting with Black Sabbath if you want to start there. But there's so many genres that have branched out, and even grindcore, which the first time I heard the term grindcore was probably from Flesh Parade and Paralysis, the New Orleans band Paralysis, because Paralysis was on grindcore records. So there was this term called grindcore. And how did you hear of grindcore, and how would you describe it? And I want to ask you, who do you think is the first grindcore band?
I mean, that's hard to say. A lot of people say it's Napalm, but then some people say Repulsion and other bands from the 80s that actually did that stuff way beforehand. That actually had a death metal sound way before death metal got popular in the early 90s or late 80s, early 90s. So yeah, I mean, I got into metal at an early age, and I say metal just as a broad term because a lot of people don't understand what grindcore is when you have to explain to them what you play. But I got into thrash metal first because of Metallica, and then in the 90s I started hanging out with all my friends that became one of our first bands called Severance, and then two of us left and joined Flesh Parade, and that me and Jason. So before we did all that, I started listening to death metal a lot because I heard it and it was heavier, it was different, and I got fixated on it. So I kept listening to that. And then
can I ask you real quick, what was your first death metal band experience? I'm so interested in people's journeys to this style of music we like so much today. So that's why I ask.
Yeah, I'm trying to think like what
or that you can remember. It doesn't have to be the first, but that made an impression of like, okay, this is death metal and I like this.
Yeah, well, the first two that come to mind that I heard and I really liked, and it was so new to me, it was Obituary and Death.
Okay.
Yeah. So those grew on me really fast. And then from there, I heard about Napalm and I put it on and finally got a copy of From Enslavement. That's actually I got a copy of Scum. That was my first CD because I was still using tapes, and then CDs were starting to come out and get popular. So I got Scum. And I remember that, and I believe I had the tape I had the tape for From Enslavement because it was given to me. And I was listening to From Enslavement more at first because I was really trying to figure out what the hell was going on in all of that noise that I was hearing. I had no idea what they were doing. Um, the bass was distorted and loud, and the guitars were kind of more on the trebly side, and it was kind of hard to hear what the music was doing, like the melody. The screaming and all that didn't bother me, and the drumming style I had to get used to. So I don't know. I put it down for a little bit, and then one day I decided to listen on headphones, and I got fixated on the bass. And I could hear every note that the bass guitar was doing because I just listened to that. And you can hear the movement and hear those notes under all of that noise that's happening at the same time. And that got me interested. So then I was like, oh, I picked up my guitar and figured out what they were tuned to. I can't remember what it was, but way higher than what we do. And I used those notes that, I heard, and I found them around the fretboard. And then I started playing the bar chords, and I'm like, oh, that's the fucking riff. That's what's behind all that. And then it became so much clearer at that point. And then I got hooked on it. And the death metal stuff was cool. We were doing that, listening to that for a while. And then that came along, and we wanted to go further into the extreme side. Like death metal wasn't enough anymore. Yeah.
Interesting.
That's how Worthless came about, and the Good Stuff demo, and the 7-inch that is on there as well.
Yeah. I have a very similar story. Believe it or not, I think the first time I heard death metal and a death metal vocal was by this band called Brutal Truth. Extreme conditions demand extreme responses.
Yeah, I love that one.
This to this day is my favorite. Like, I consider this grindcore.
It's really fast, dude. But the production on it is like really good, and it's heavy, and you can hear everything that's going on. I like that.
I do too. And it's the first time I heard, like, Kevin Sharp from Brutal Truth. I love the vocals. It's the first time I heard the roar, like, and believe it or not, Ben from Paralysis and Goat Whore, and Soylent Green, he actually, we knew each other, and he could tell that I was into heavier stuff, but I wasn't. I was getting to know him and what he was doing lately, and he was in Paralysis, and he knew I liked things like Faith No More, Pantera, but I guess he just did it as a shot in the dark, and he made a cassette of this Brutal Truth, Extreme Conditions Demand Extreme Responses.
Yeah, he was big on giving people cassettes.
Yeah. That's funny. That is so funny. Yeah. And
everybody knew his handwriting.
What's that?
Everybody knew his handwriting too, because he'd write it, all on the card for you.
Yeah, I actually remember it. I remember his handwriting. I remember it was a Memorex. You remember the cassettes? It was you could tape. It was a Memorex. It had a yellow decal. It was when like bright colors were in. But I lived in Metairie, and I drive to the University of New Orleans for art classes and stuff. And that's where I was going at the time. But I would listen to it there and back, and I just found myself keep going to it. Then I figured out the patterns. I figured out where things were super fast and blast beats, and then where things slowed down. I really like the slow parts, but the fast parts made the slow parts even better, and that, like, to me, that's what hooked me.
Grindcore beats, have been done in jazz for a long time.
Heard that.
And Todd loves playing jazz too, so he incorporates all this stuff into Flesh Parade that most people wouldn't even expect. Like, just listen on some of the songs, and he's on the ride, and he's just ding 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 ding, little things like that, and then just the way that he approaches fills too, and the feel that he has for the parts.
It's interesting that you mentioned jazz because I interviewed Randy Jackson from Zebra.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I'm a big fan of Zebra. I have the Zebra records back here. Kind of
Yeah, I
grew
see
up.
it. Mhm.
Yeah, I got all three of them, but I'm actually going to be in New Orleans. Plug their show, November 18th, House of Blues, Zebra. I'll be there. Guy Gelso is also a jazz drummer. That came from a jazz background, and I said to Randy, I said, jazz drummers make the best metal drummers. You know,
Yeah,
um,
they got feel. That's why it works in an odd way. He's into a lot of other stuff, so he incorporates that into our music, and jazz is one of them. Um, he's really big on the Melvins, so
mm,
a lot of his drum style is similar to Dale Crover when we're doing heavy, slow stuff, and
hmm
he hits the fucking hell out of the drums. He's loud. Might not look like it, but he's loud.
That's what Randy Jackson said about Guy Gelso. He's just loud,
Yeah.
hits hard. You
Yeah.
know. Yeah, so I got turned on to Brutal Truth and death metal, and then Ben and Todd actually were playing a show together. It was Fuss Parade and Paralysis sometime in 1992. I don't remember. And I was like, I
Mhm.
want to see this live. I want to see this Brutal Truth sound, and I want to see guys do it live. So this was my first time. I had a flyer, Paralysis, Flesh Parade. So I went to it by myself. I remember driving my 79 Chevrolet Nova to the show. It was somewhere in New Orleans. I don't know where, probably, somewhere scary. And I remember seeing it. And I remember um Jason and his vocals, and I was just mesmerized. I was like, wow, that is freaking awesome,
Yeah.
and just the lows and the highs and the repetitiveness, well, not the repetitiveness, but it's almost a tempo that goes along with some of the guitars and the drums. So we have grindcore, right? I had a grindcore like VHS tape. It was called, like, I don't know, I metal something, and it was like grindcore or special or whatever, and it had Bolt Thrower on it. It had Napalm Death on it. It was like a documentary, and it did have Earache all over it. It was interviewing the founder of Earache and what he saw in these bands, and it had like Paradise Lost on it though, which wasn't an Earache band. So I don't know, but I'll put it on the screen. I'll find it. I've seen it. And
Yeah.
Napalm Death was on it, and it was around, I think, Utopia Banished or stuff, stuff for the children era. But so yeah, I think it's safe to say Napalm Death kind of started from one way or the other grindcore, and I think Enslavement to Obliteration is probably, to me, where it really came together. I know people reference Scum for sure, which
Yeah.
also had Justin Broderick on it from Godflesh.
Yeah, yeah, I love that one too. Like for me, Scum, From Enslavement, and Peel Sessions are the ones that I love. And then, of course, there's some stuff beyond that I really like a lot too. Um, Utopia Banished has a lot of good songs on it, and Harmony Corruption actually was really big on me because it's a little more death metal
Mm-hmm. Yep.
sound.
Yep.
It's got grind in it, but it definitely incorporates a little bit more of that death metal sound. And then Utopia Banished went towards the grind sound, which was
Yeah.
cool. And a lot of their new stuff, man, they're really good. Like they're
Oh
just
yeah.
keep banging it out. But yeah, if I had to pick three out of their immense catalog, those first three are the ones that influenced me the most.
Yeah. I as far as Napalm Death goes, I would say Cannibal Corpse is up there, it
Oh
was,
yeah.
so before I bring them up, Napalm Death, I want to talk a little bit more about Napalm Death. Yeah, I mean, they've been consistently putting out records since, late 80s and never stopped, I mean, I don't know what they're up to now, 20 records at this point, probably.
Yeah,
And
it's a lot. And they
and
tour like crazy.
Oh, I know. And you're not going to find many people that say, "Oh, they suck." Their later records suck. All their records are good. And they put a lot of effort into it. I was a fan. I've always noticed. and it could just be my background and where I came through, you know, Pantera, thrash, Faith No More, stuff like
I
that.
love
But
Faith.
yeah, yeah, I do want to talk about this record, Angel Dust.
Yeah.
But like I like the Napalm Death, the groove metal, the groovy Napalm Death, mid-90s stuff that no one, that when Machine Head came out and a lot of people didn't like that stuff. I love that stuff. But like um which ones are there? Diatribes, and then there was Words from the Exit Wound, and
Yeah, they were kind of going a little more commercial with those.
yeah, we
And
say commercial, but it's still heavy as fuck, man. I
oh
mean, it's
yeah,
not
yeah. But I mean, you know, that's the stuff that would get more plays on things like MTV and you know,
yeah,
at the time because
that,
that was so
yeah.
big. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was, and that's why I was gonna bring up Death, like because Headbangers Ball would every now and then throw in a death metal video or something close. And I remember seeing Death for the first time. It was The Philosopher. Remember that video and song?
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. I love the Human Man. Like that record is great. Like
Mm-hmm.
so many melodies and just the performance overall.
Yeah.
Drums are insane. The bass, you know, is insane, and all the riffs that you know they play are awesome. You know, it's just like from start to finish, really good.
What's amazing to me is though is like I was just mentioning my tastes is that you guys, like you, Ben, Todd, you guys were onto this shit way before I was, and a lot of people were, because y'all were recording it in the early 90s,
Yeah,
not long after the term was coined. You know, I mean, that's impressive. I mean, that is the front end, right?
I guess you know they were doing stuff in the '80s, like Scum and From Enslavement. That's really old stuff from the '80s.
Yeah, but we say that's old, but it's we're only talking what, 7 years?
Yeah, maybe yeah, something like that. You know, Flesh Parade started in 1990.
Yeah. And you know, Paralysis probably started in 1990, 89. You had I'm just speaking from a death metal standpoint, a grindcore standpoint. But I mean, y'all weren't far behind, which is, that's always impressed me too, because it's still popular today. I mean, the Flesh Parade Facebook page. I mean, I just found it, came across it. I sent a picture. You retweeted it or reposted it, and man, I was just getting more likes than anything I could create on my own. I
Oh,
put
really?
yeah, I mean, I put pictures on Facebook. This channel, I mean, it's doing
Yeah.
okay, but it never gets a response of like that. So there's some people that really I feel like what makes y'all different is the swampy, slower parts, and that's what I said I liked about Real Truth, and
Mhm.
I think there's just something about New Orleans metal, and the swamps, and then the water and the Dixie beer. There's just something that gives it a swagger that you have to live in to know what it is and know what it feels like. And people metalheads outside of New Orleans can appreciate it
Yeah.
more so than people who are living in it, because they don't know it. It's like
Yeah. It's got a southern, you know, bluesy style to it sometimes.
the other thing I want to talk about is the tongue-in-cheek aspect of it, and that's what appealed to me. Because I moved to Memphis after that show. I literally transferred from the University of New Orleans to University of Memphis, and that Flesh Parade Paralysis show was the last thing I did in New Orleans before I woke up the next morning. I moved, and I never came back to New Orleans. Well, to visit. So then I picked up where I left off with no friends. I didn't know anybody. And then I had to see what local death metal bands were around here. And I saw a band called Purgatory. They were a Memphis death metal band. I would say more death metal, less grindcore. But what I
Uh-huh.
liked about it, have you heard of Purgatory by any chance from Memphis?
Yeah, I believe so. I don't
Okay.
think I've listened to them though.
They turned into a band. They weren't a there were early 90s, but then they spun off into a band called Incineration, which is a death metal band from Memphis.
Oh yeah, yeah. We played with those guys
Yeah. Yeah, they're still
at
playing
the
today.
at the High Tone.
That's right.
I have the flyer hanging up next to me.
Damn, man. I didn't know y'all played at the High Tone. What year was that?
It was 2011. That show was July 23rd, 2011, because we did a little mini tour and we went through there up to Chicago and played a
Man.
festival and then came back down. But yeah, it was Incineration and Cremains was the other one that, and
Mhm.
I thought they were all great. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I mean, Incineration was like you guys. They just been doing it in Memphis, you know. I mean, just been at it literally 30 years plus.
yeah,
They have not changed their sound. Instead of being, well, you know, instead of being in our late 40s, early 50s, we were in our late teens, early 20s, you know, but the
yeah,
sound is the
yeah.
same. It's great. So that's cool. Yeah, so I came here. But so then this was still when records were really big and CD stores were really big, and there was this really big place here in Memphis
Oh
called
yeah.
Planet Music. And you can actually go in. They had these CD stations. They'd open it up for you. You could go sit down, listen to it, and bring it, and they'd reseal it and put it back on the floor so you can listen
Yeah,
to stuff.
they used to have that here too.
Yeah, it was great. So I remember buying this there. So this came out in 98. And so this was, you know, a good 5 or 6 years removed from when I saw y'all live. But I was like, oh yeah, I remember them. I got to get that. So I got it. Um, and the tongue in cheek, the title, this is classic, right? Kill Whitey, you know, the imagery, like everyone, you got to realize everyone at this time had an indecipherable logo, much like Brutal Truth, that you could barely
Oh
see.
yeah.
Like there was a blueprint. This is death metal, and the blueprint is everything looks like this, sounds like this. This is grindcore.
Nope.
And then you got Block fucking Helvetica, you know. I'm like, I
Yeah.
like that, you know. And I do remember seeing y'all and y'all just look. This is another reason I like grindcore is and Incineration and Purgatory. When I saw Purgatory for the first time, which once again became Incineration, it was dudes wearing their Fruit of the Loom warm up 100% cotton pants, you know, with like tennis shoes. It was like no one changed just because we're going on stage. Everyone wore on stage what they're wearing when they woke up that morning. And then I like the natural aspect of it. I don't like people to take themselves too seriously. And I felt like this is a type of music and the tongue in cheek and what you guys were especially doing with this tongue in cheek stuff. The names of the songs, it doesn't fit grindcore, but it's
Yeah.
100% grindcore the way it sounds. It's ferocious. You look like you want to say something. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm just laughing because I'm thinking of like how that got put together. It's bringing back a lot of memories.
Good or bad?
No, hilarious ones.
Okay. Okay. Tell me about it. Like, how'd that come about?
Um,
I mean, even the
so
Microsoft, yeah, Paint, like I just love it. All right, go ahead. I'm sorry, I'll shut up.
yeah, let me think how it all came about. So the cover Todd found, and probably when he was going to school with you and Ben, because he found it in one of his books.
Okay.
And we looked it up. I can't remember the name of the tribe, but their whole like purpose is to procreate.
Hmm.
And they wear those big phalluses to show their dominance and how many people they've impregnated.
Nice.
So he thought it was funny that we use it for the cover. And it didn't grow on me at first. I'm like, really? We're gonna go this route? And actually, we actually had it on shirts before it became that. So I didn't think we were going to use it on a CD, but it just kind of, evolved into the 7-inch and then relapsed like the demos the way they were. And they wanted to put them out with the 7-inch on disc. So that's what happened.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he found that picture and we had that for the cover. And then everyone started compiling all these just crazy photos.
Okay.
You got the guy with the gunman, and it says Kill Whitey under him. And then you got the CD tray with all the like Japanese guys and guns and disc, which we used Bruce Lee on the old demo tapes. So we ended up using it on the disc.
Mm-hmm.
And we kept that kind of tradition going. And in the back, we needed to come up with what we were going to put on the back. And we were joking around one night, and I said, why don't we use those pictures you got? And I'm not naming which band member did this, but
That's fine.
This person worked in a photo lab at night.
Oh,
He
old Fox photo.
He used to collect those types of photos that you see on there if he saw them because he thought they were funny.
Yeah.
So I said, you got all these guys in here, man. You got a fetish or something? Like,
hold on.
So, and then he's like, but they're funny. Look. And he would pick them up and go, he's saying, I'll be with you in a minute. And and it really looked like the dude was saying that. And that's the guy that I used as me on the back of the CD.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, they dove into doing all this stuff on the disc and the bullet holes and all that stuff. And I was just at this point, I said, this thing is so all over the place. We might as well just say that we're these guys instead. And mind you, the name Kill Whitey didn't exist yet. This was all being put together quickly, and because Relapse wanted to do something, and we ended up picking those 4 people. Everybody picked who they wanted to be for the back photo. And I actually have that on my page as me, my back photo.
I love it, man. I love it. I love it.
So as it was, I was like, this is borderline offensive, guys. I was the one that would bring in just like, should we do this? And like, it's just funny, man. Nobody's gonna give a shit.
Yeah.
All right. So we were working on a bunch of songs that aren't on there, and the active title was Back on the Island, in reference to that song John Simon Island that we ended up doing on Dirty Sweet. We already mailed everything in because we didn't really have email yet going on, and we went ahead and sent it in. And then one of the members calls me up. I'm not going to mention names.
Okay.
And goes, hey, do we have any time to change the name of the record? And I said, I don't know, man. I already sent everything in, but I'll give him a call. So I called Pellet because he's the guy that actually found us and wanted to bring us into Relapse. And I told him, hey, we're going to change the name. And he goes, okay, what's it going to be? We can still change it. And I said, it's going to be Kill Whitey. And he goes, you're fucking kidding me. That's awesome. Like something like that. And, and he just started busting out laughing. Like when he saw those pictures, he said he almost pissed his pants of the pictures on the back.
I know, man. That's the funniest part. I mean,
yeah,
this is why I think why Flash Parade is different, and a lot of New Orleans bands are different. We don't take ourselves too seriously, and
we weren't.
And clearly, when you have a band's name, Flash Parade, which I love the name, by the way, I want to get into that, but this humorous work of art here, you're not trying to get to the top of Billboard charts. You know what I'm saying?
No. We were surprised it was even in stores. I got copies sent to us, but the CD itself, we didn't see until it was in the store. So I went out and I bought it off the shelf. There was like
where? What store?
Virgin Mega Store in the Quarter.
Okay.
Yeah,
I remember that place.
They had a shitload of them on the shelf, and then you go through the alphabet, and there was the backer for it, and they had some right there in the shelf. So yeah, that felt pretty cool to be able to buy your first like CD that gets put out and then listen to it. And I didn't know what it was going to look like either because they took some liberties on the art.
Yeah.
So and it ended up being cool because we kind of just used it for merch and stuff like that.
Yeah. When I went into the store and I saw it, I laughed. I think it's if you're offended easily and you don't find racial humor humorous or whatever humorous, then you shouldn't you probably never you shouldn't be listening to grindcore. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's you have to find this. You know, it's not like this just finds you. You know, I took it as a joke.
Right.
I thought it was hilarious. I'm
It
into
was. Yeah.
I'm into racial humor. I liked Howard Stern. I think making fun of
Yeah.
white people is just as funny as making fun of black people or any other nationality or you know
Yeah. Yeah. We
whatever.
were targeting our own selves, you know. That artwork didn't go without some people getting pissed off
Oh, tell
because
me about it. What happened?
I've had some people kind of combat me online about it, and you know, I try to assure them like that's not really how we are. It's just a comedic, you know, layout. That's really what we think of it as.
Yeah.
And we're targeting our own selves, you know. So
Yeah.
you know, we're not targeting any other race. We want to kill the white people. So
Yeah. Yeah, times were a little bit different back then too.
yeah.
Back then you didn't know that, 30 years from now this is still going to be around. I don't think it's that offensive. I think what saves it is the back. I mean, if you don't think this is funny, where the pictures y'all use to me, that's like, okay, this is hilarious. That's I think that's a dead giveaway. That's awesome. That's awesome. That just that's that I've had it for so long, and I haven't. This is my first time really hearing it from the horse's mouth, so to speak. Um, of how that came about, how the artwork came about, because I've literally been looking at this thing since I got it, and I'll throw it in every now and then. And I'm just like, damn, it's just so good, so good. I think it's brilliant. I think that's why. I'm not gonna say why. I think the sound of the music is what I want to get into. What's on the CD and the sound on it. But I
Sure.
think that's why I feel like this record still has an allure, because more than likely people who bought it were like, this is unique, this is different, this is gonna stay in my collection, or this is something I need to add to my collection because this is different, sound wise, everything we're talking about, art wise. This is like, to me, I have a lot of CDs. I got prank call CDs. I got all kinds of stuff. This is on a level of a collector's item for me. Just everything about it. And I think other people feel the same way. Obviously, that's why we're still talking about it today, and it's not just me. There's a lot of people talking about it. I want to talk about the sound now. We did talk about grindcore. We did talk about the swagger and the slower parts. Vocally, I'm fascinated with the vocals, and I mentioned seeing that roar, but the highs, the screaming highs, the high pitched shrieks. I started to hear a little bit of that on this album. Before, Faith No More, Angel Dust. I heard what Mike Patton was doing.
Yeah.
And bringing in, and then I heard Mr. Bungle, particularly the first Mr. Bungle record, where he was doing, it was more metal. I don't know, they're both metal, Faith No More's metal, but it's different, and I could hear him vocally what he was doing. I'm like, man, he's doing some interesting things with his voice. And then Flesh Parade, when I finally got this, I got to hear it loud. I got to hear it on a recording like I've never heard it before. And I was like, wow, that is taking that and running with it. I mean, that is just basing the style, that high shriekness. It's so powerful. I love it. And the way Jason Pilgrim was going, like da, 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 like following the snare or something. It's like bah, 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 bah. The breath control, just everything about it. And it was so unique. No one was doing that, I don't think, like that.
Well, yeah, I mean, there were other singers that influenced him that did that. Yeah, he's one of the highest pitched ones, and there is a good way to do that scream really high, and there's a bad way. You can hear the difference, and
Yes.
he hits whatever that pitch is that he's hitting every time he goes up there. Like he's pretty consistent. The rhythm that you're talking about that he's doing is based on rapping. That's pretty much what he did. He said, "I'm gonna rap all over this."
Love it.
And that became his style. And really, like, he and I began doing all the primary writing. So that became our sound together, like the way he sung with what I wrote.
Yeah. It's great. It's unique. And hearing it in 98 when this came out for the first time, it was like grindcore, obviously, but unique grindcore, and it was all of it. It was your guitars, your guitar tone, your riffs, but it was also what Todd was doing. It was also what the bass player is doing. Like you mentioned, when you mentioned earlier about the bass and what attracted you, it reminded me of Geezer Butler. Like when I listen to Black Sabbath, I'm listening to Geezer's bass riffs as much as I'm listening to the guitars, and it's doing a totally different thing sometimes. It's great stuff.
Yeah, I listen to everything. Like, I can focus on everything now. Where, in my early teens, I was just really centered in on the guitars. But then, as I got a little older, everything started expanding, and my music taste expanded because I was hardcore, just metal for a while. And then everything else started coming into my ear, and I started appreciating a lot of other stuff. So, and then just the different stuff that I've learned, I've tried to incorporate that into any music that I write. So, I don't sight read, but I do know music theory. So, some stuff goes with that approach, the Flesh Parade stuff, and some stuff really doesn't. It's just, a riff that came out of my head, and I like the way it sounded, but others kind of follow certain things that are part of songwriting, like actual songwriting steps. You listen to any pop song today on the radio, they all do pretty much the same exact formula. And every now and then I would throw that into one of our songs.
Yeah, that makes sense. That definitely makes sense. And I try to pick songs that have a little bit of everything that I like, and it's amazing how much y'all pack into like a minute and 40. Like you're mentioning music theory, formulas, things like that. Sometimes you go and you keep a formula, sometimes you break away from the formula.
I just go on the feel or the sound,
Dirty Sweet is quintessential Flesh Parade. I mean, it's literally a continuation of this, and that's what's so great about it. But I think if I heard any added element, it was a little bit of a Doom element. Little aspects.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. Some of it's just like the doomy stuff that other bands do in New Orleans that might have influenced me on some of that stuff.
And then I like how you threw another curveball as far as the design. It's once again, it's like, a departure. The titles of the songs, the pink and the yellow, which I love it. So tell me how that came about.
So Todd was given a drum head by, I think, a neighbor or someone he knew, and it was when we were in our teens. And Todd says, "Yeah, look what I got from my neighbor," and he pulls out this drum head, and it's got the lady that you see in the star on Dirty Sweet, except it's the full deal, like all painted on this drum head, and it actually said Dirty Sweet on it. And Todd started using that when we played shows. So it became a funny thing with us. Some people would introduce us before we started and say, "You're about to hear the Dirty Sweet sounds of Flesh Parade," and shit like that. But when we started doing the record, we, no one wanted to be serious. I kind of wanted to do something different, but then we started talking about that drum head, and I said, dude, why don't we just use the drum head as the basis for the whole album? We'll call it Dirty Sweet, and we'll theme it like Motley Crue or some shit, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And we all liked that, you know, we thought it was funny. The reason those colors came about is we sent it to a friend of ours to start designing it,
Mm-hmm.
and he started coming up with the, you know, all the crazy colors, and the pink and yellow kind of stood out, and he came up with the star. You know, he's like, I didn't want to just put her on there because it looked too plain. She needed to be in something. And we're like, okay, that's
Mm-hmm.
cool. Um, and yeah, so we went that route. And then, of course, the interior of the disc has some other stuff that was created by another artist in Canada that I've known for decades now. And he added, you know, the rest to it to complete it and make the cover go with the rest of the layout.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I look forward to buying it. I think we do need to tell people that if they like Kill Whitey, they're gonna like this too. I mean, I'm sure everyone's heard it, but you can still get it. I went to Mainstay Recordings website.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I want to add Dirty Sweet to my collection. And yeah, I have an interesting story about that Dirty Sweet. You know, I followed you guys on social media whenever I would find you. And you know, I was looking at Dirty Sweet this week when we talked about doing this interview, and I wanted to go back and listen to it, and then I saw 2010 and I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Was it 2000? Was it 13 fucking years ago?
Yeah, time flies, man.
Dude, I
It's
was like,
ridiculous.
but I remember watching, like, you guys, I was following you guys or whatever on YouTube. This had to be early YouTube. Um, and you guys were streaming the recording of the record, of Dirty Sweet
Yeah.
in the studio, and I
Yeah.
was watching it.
It was between like 2008 and 2010 that we made the record, and we did it for a little bit, you know.
Yeah, it was I mean, it was before streaming like it is today. I mean, I do remember breaking up and barely getting to see anything, but the fact that it at that time, let's just say it was 2009, right? I mean, you know, it was difficult to do something live on the internet back then, you know. And I do I was just I just being a fan of the sound and the band, and I've always been a fan of anything that documents a recording of an album. I've always been interested in that. So I do remember that making an impression on me. And once again, I just can't believe that was almost 15 years ago. It's crazy, man. It's just absolutely crazy. I want to go on a spiel about like when we started, when we're talking Flesh Parade's origins, early 90s. And what I saw and the vocals, the high shriekness, where I wanted to go with that was, I think when I saw it sort of become, I don't want to use the term mainstream, but Suicide Silence, that band, Mitch Lucker,
Yeah.
I feel like he was influenced by Flesh Parade, maybe Flesh Parade. I don't know. I don't know if that's on record, but grindcore. I think where I feel, you know, there's some black metal elements from Norway in the high shrieking vocals, but somewhere along the line, he heard it. He's younger than we are. Suicide Silence brought it in. Death growls with high pitched shrieks, and then Suicide Silence was really big, right? And then a lot of bands sprung
Yeah.
forth from that. And then you had what I guess was called metalcore. Would you agree with that? Was that what sort of Suicide Silence?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that term. Really, I don't get into all those new terms. You
Sure,
know, I hear a lot of new metal, and whatever catches my ear, I listen
hmm
to it if I like it.
sure.
But a lot of the new metal stuff doesn't really grab my ear like it should. You know what I mean? Um, but then
Yeah,
there's great bands in between that just, you know, they're amazing. They grab your ear no matter who they are.
sure. Yeah, the reason I'm bringing it up is because it feels like, you know, Suicide Silence, 2010, 2015 was a lot of bands where I feel like were exposed to grindcore and started bringing that sound, and it got to a high level, and then it started sort of a genre within a genre. Now I've been getting into, like, through my YouTube algorithm, like I've noticed now there are like genres of grindcore. There's porno grind, there's
Oh yeah.
gore grind, horror grind, cyber grind. There's all these different grinds, right?
Yeah.
Like there's one band I really like called Guitarist. They're from the Czech. They sing about shit. Everything's about shit. It's all tongue in
Yeah, I've heard
cheek.
of it.
That's the thing, though. It's all tongue in cheek. Clearly, the names of the songs, the logo. It's just so offensive. But there's a grindcore sound. Like if you forget all that and you just listen to it, I'm like, this sound is what I like. I like this. And then I'm like, this is Flash Parade. This is what Flash Parade was doing in 1995, 94, 93. People will say Carcass, early Carcass is the start of gore grind. But do you see where I'm going with that?
Yeah.
But
and I love Carcass too.
Yeah. But the vocals, especially the shrieking vocals and stuff, I'm like, man, that's why I respect you guys a lot to be on the forefront of something. Man, you and Todd and Ben, you guys were doing stuff 30 years ago that people respect now and that are doing elements of it in their music today, all around the world, So I want to give you props for that. And that's really a big reason I want to interview you, because of that. It's just amazing, man.
Appreciate it.
All right, well, we'll be in touch. Thanks again.
All right, thanks for having me on.
All right, take care.
You too.